The Kepler Station Imperial Survey Office operated on what could charitably be called geological time. Forms moved through the system with the urgency of continental drift, and threat assessments aged like fine wine or radioactive waste, depending on your perspective. Commander Vex High had been staring at the same holographic display for 3 standard cycles, watching data streams crawl across his visual cortex with all the excitement of watching paint dry on a moon with no atmosphere. Korth, he called his analyst, a 6-limbed insectoid whose compound eyes were currently fractured into 17 different expressions of mild irritation. When exactly did we last update the Sol 3 assessment? The clicking sound that emerged from Korth's mandibles could have been laughter or the sound of bureaucratic machinery finally grinding to a halt. Define update, Commander. If you mean when we last looked at it, that would be never. If you mean when it was filed, that would be... The insectoid's antennae twitched as he accessed the database. 52 standard years for months and 16 days ago. Vex High's reptilian features arranged themselves into what passed for a frown among his species. And the assessment was... Primitive mammalian species exhibiting early tool use and territorial aggression. Recommendation: monitor for signs of atomic fission. Estimated time to spaceflight: 2 to 3 centuries. Threat level: negligible to amusing. The commander's secondary eyelids fluttered, a sign of deep thought or impending stroke. Korth, what year is it? Standard Imperial Calendar Year 2847, sir. And what year was that assessment filed? There was a pause that seemed to stretch across several galactic rotations. Then Korth's compound eyes began shifting through what could only be described as mounting horror. Oh, that's not good. Define not good. In terms of reptilian intelligence evolved for long-term strategic thinking can understand. Korth's chittering increased in both frequency and pitch. Well, sir, according to our current monitoring station reports, the ones that get filed automatically and which nobody actually reads, Sol 3 appears to have developed faster-than-light communication approximately 15 standard years ago. The silence that followed was the kind typically reserved for moments when entire star systems realize they've made a terrible mistake. Vex High's tongue, a magnificent purple appendage designed for tasting air for threats, flickered out once and immediately retreated, as if the very atmosphere had become toxic. Faster-than-light communication, he repeated slowly. Yes, sir. The rock-throwing mammals. Apparently no longer exclusively relying on rocks, sir. The ones we classified as amusing. They've also been broadcasting quantum-encrypted signals for the past 18 months. Our translation algorithms keep crashing when they try to decode them. Vex High stood up, which was a complex process involving the coordination of several joints that had evolved for an entirely different gravitational field. Show me the current data stream. The holographic display shimmered and resolved into something that made both beings take an involuntary step backward. Where the old assessment had shown scattered electromagnetic emissions consistent with early industrial civilization, the current readout looked like someone had taught a supernova to communicate in mathematical theorems. Those are quantum entanglement cascades, Korth whispered, his voice carrying the reverence typically reserved for observing natural disasters from a safe distance. I can see that. What I can't see is how a species that was supposedly banging rocks together 50 years ago managed to skip approximately 6 centuries of normal technological development. About that, sir, Korth's mandibles clicked nervously. I've been cross-referencing our deep space reconnaissance reports with the Sol system monitoring data. And remember those 17 meteorite impacts our long-range sensors detected in the Sol system over the past 47 years? Vex High's pupils dilated. Never a good sign in a species where pupil dilation typically preceded either violent mating displays or homicidal rage. Those were reconnaissance probes, weren't they? Failed reconnaissance probe, sir. The kind that crash when they encounter unexpected atmospheric conditions, or, hypothetically, when they're shot down by species that have progressed beyond throwing rocks. All 17 of them. All 17 of them, sir. Each one equipped with standard Imperial technology packages designed for studying primitive civilizations. The commander's tongue made another brief appearance, tasted defeat, and disappeared again. So what you're telling me is that we've been accidentally providing a species we thought was primitive with regular deliveries of advanced technology for nearly half a century. That would be an accurate assessment, sir. And in that time, they've not only reverse engineered our technology, but improved upon it to the point where they're now broadcasting signals our own equipment can't decode. That would also be accurate, sir. Vexhide began what could only be described as pacing. If pacing were performed by a being whose ancestors had evolved from something resembling a particularly anxious crocodile, Korth, in your professional opinion, as someone who presumably attended some form of educational institution, how catastrophically have we underestimated the situation? The insectoid's compound eyes performed a rapid calculation that involved consulting several databases, cross-referencing threat assessment protocols, and quietly having what amounted to an existential crisis. Sir, I believe the technical term would be comprehensively. Define comprehensively. Well, sir, if our current data is accurate, Sol 3, which apparently calls itself Earth, has gone from pre-spaceflight civilization to near-peer technological status in roughly the same amount of time it takes our requisitions department to approve a request for new office furniture. The commander stopped pacing. Are you telling me that while we were filling out forms, an entire species has basically completed a technological revolution? Multiple technological revolutions, sir. Their development curve isn't just exponential. It's aggressively exponential. They appear to treat technological advancement the way most species treat breathing. Vexhide's secondary eyelids closed completely. A physiological response a species had developed for situations where the primary brain needed to shut down temporarily to prevent complete psychological breakdown. Korth. Yes, sir. How long before our next scheduled threat assessment update? For Sol 3? Another 48 years, sir. And how long before they figure out faster-than-light travel at their current rate of advancement? The clicking sound that emerged from Kortha's mandibles this time was definitely not laughter. Based on their progression curve? Approximately 6 months ago, sir. The Hegemony Council Chamber had been designed to inspire awe, or at least mild intimidation. Crystalline spires twisted toward a dome that displayed real-time images of conquered star systems, while gravity wells kept representatives from 43 different species floating at precisely calculated intervals. The architecture screamed cosmic authority with all the subtlety of a supernova. But today it felt more like an expensive backdrop for a catastrophe. Ambassador Keelnox let her gill slits flutter with barely contained amusement as she watched General Thrackmore's carapace shift through increasingly aggressive shades of orange. The aquatic diplomat had seen enough emergency sessions to recognize the signs of collective panic. And this particular gathering had all the hallmarks of a species-wide anxiety attack. You're certain the intelligence is accurate? Chancellor Euthera's voice rippled through dimensions that most beings couldn't perceive, carrying undertones of something that might have been ancient laughter. The energy beings formed flickered between states of matter, as if the very concept of physical existence was negotiable. General Thrackmore's mandibles clacked with military precision. 3 separate monitoring stations have confirmed it. The Sol System species, these humans, have achieved technological parity in areas we considered our exclusive domain. They're broadcasting on quantum frequencies we haven't seen outside our own core worlds. Parity is a generous term, interjected Ambassador Keelnox, her voice carrying the liquid cadence of someone who breathed water and spoke truth with equal ease. According to the latest reports, they've actually exceeded our capabilities in several areas. Their quantum encryption protocols are causing our best cryptographers to have what I believe the medical staff is calling intellectual breakdowns. Representative Zixtar, whose species communicated primarily through controlled electromagnetic pulses, sent a burst of frequencies that roughly translated to profane astonishment. How does a species progress from primitive tool use to advanced quantum mechanics in 50 years? Our own technological advancement has remained essentially static for the past millennium. That, said Chancellor Yathera with something that definitely sounded like amusement now, is precisely the problem. The chamber fell silent, except for the ambient hum of life support systems working overtime to accommodate 43 different atmospheric requirements. General Thrackmore's carapace had shifted to a deep crimson that indicated either combat readiness or severe embarrassment. "What do you mean, Chancellor?" Ambassador Keelnox asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. "We become bureaucratically fossilized," the energy being replied, its form stabilizing into something resembling attention. Our last major technological breakthrough was the development of interdimensional filing systems. That was 800 years ago. We've spent more time cataloging our achievements than creating new ones. Representative Movar, whose crystalline structure resonated with harmonic frequencies, produced a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Are you suggesting that our administrative efficiency has somehow compromised our innovative capacity?" "I'm suggesting," Chancellor Yathera's form brightened ominously, "that while we've been perfecting the art of governing a stable empire, these humans have been perfecting the art of not being stable. They appear to treat technological stagnation as a form of death." General Thrackmore's color spectrum shifted to tactical assessment mode. "Then we eliminate the threat before it becomes unmanageable. Standard protocol for emerging species that exceed projection parameters." "With what?" Ambassador Keelnox's gill slit snapped shut in what passed for incredulity among her species. "Our military technology is designed to subjugate civilizations that fight with energy weapons and basic force fields. These humans have apparently learned to weaponize mathematics." "Explain," demanded the general. "Their quantum communications aren't just communications," she continued, consulting a data tablet that seemed to bend light around its edges. "They're reality manipulation protocols. They're not just sending messages through quantum entanglement. They're editing the quantum states themselves. Our tactical computers are classifying their civilian broadcasts as potential WMDs. Representative Zixtar's electromagnetic emissions took on a panic frequency. Civilian broadcasts? Their entertainment media contains embedded quantum algorithms that are apparently teaching their children advanced physics as a form of recreational activity. What we consider doctoral-level quantum mechanics, they're using for something called video games. The silence that followed was the kind typically associated with entire civilizations realizing they've been outpaced by something they'd previously considered adorable. Chancellor Yathera's form began cycling through what could only be described as confused amusement. "There's more," Ambassador Keelnox continued, her voice taking on the tone of someone delivering news that was either wonderful or terrible, depending on your perspective. "Our xenoarchaeology department has been analyzing those failed reconnaissance missions. The meteorite impacts?" General Thrackmore's carapace went completely transparent. A physiological response a species had developed for situations requiring maximum camouflage or complete psychological retreat. The humans didn't just salvage our technology. They improved it. Each crash probe contained standard Imperial equipment packages, but the crash sites show evidence of systematic reverse engineering followed by what can only be described as aggressive optimization. "Define aggressive optimization," Chancellor Yathera requested, though its form suggested it was bracing for an answer it wouldn't like. "They've been taking our technology and making it better. Not just functional, better. Our reconnaissance drones were designed to last 50 years with regular maintenance. The humans have apparently been using components to build things that should be theoretically impossible with that technology base. Representative Movar produced a crystalline chime that expressed existential dread with remarkable clarity. They've been using our own technology to exceed our capabilities. Worse than that, Ambassador Keel Knox's gills fluttered in what might have been admiration or horror. They've been innovating. Our species achieved technological maturity and then focused on refinement and stability. These humans seem to view technological maturity as a starting point. General Thrackmore's transparency began to flicker between visible and invisible, a sign of deep tactical confusion. What's our response protocol for a species that treats our advanced technology as raw materials for further advancement? We don't have one, Chancellor Yathera admitted. Our threat assessment algorithms assume that emerging species will follow standard development patterns: gradual progression, predictable limitations, eventual integration into existing power structures. And these humans appear to have decided that standard development patterns are suggestions rather than universal laws. The chamber filled with the distinctive sounds of 43 different species simultaneously reconsidering their understanding of galactic civilization. Ambassador Keel Knox consulted her data tablet again, her expression cycling through several emotions that didn't have names in most languages. "There's one more thing," she said quietly. "According to our deep space monitoring stations, they've been watching us." "Watching us how?" General Thrackmore's carapace snapped back to full visibility, now displaying patterns that indicate imminent combat or complete panic. "They've been monitoring our communications, not just passively listening, actively decoding our diplomatic channels, our military frequencies, our internal administrative networks. They know we exist, they know we've been studying them, and they know we've been classifying them as primitives." The silence that followed was pregnant with the kind of implications that usually preceded historical footnotes reading, "And then everything changed forever." Chancellor Yathera's form stabilized into something resembling grim determination. "How long have they been watching?" "Best estimate? About as long as we've been ignoring them." The transmission room aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Inevitable Conclusion had been built for delivering ultimatums to species that communicated through interpretive dance and chemical emissions. It was not, however, designed for receiving responses that made the ship's artificial intelligence file formal complaints about intellectual property violations. Dr. Chen Wei-Ming appeared on the view screen with the casual confidence of someone who had been expecting this call for approximately 3 years. Behind her, holographic displays showed what appeared to be a complete schematic of the inevitable conclusion, complete with technical specifications that should have been classified at levels requiring dimensional encryption. "Greetings," she said in flawless galactic standard, her accent carrying inflections from at least 6 different Imperial dialects. "I assume this is about our recent applications for membership in various galactic trade consortiums. We've been wondering when someone would get around to returning our calls." Commander Vexhai, who had been promoted to this diplomatic mission primarily because he discovered the intelligence failure in the first place, felt his secondary eyelids begin an involuntary spasm. "You speak galactic standard." "Fluently," Dr. Chen replied, switching seamlessly to High Imperial, then to Crystalline Harmonic, and finally to something that sounded like controlled stellar radiation. "We've had plenty of time to study your linguistic patterns. Your communication protocols are quite elegant, by the way. We've made some improvements." Captain Torres stepped into frame, her uniform bearing insignia that somehow looked both military and diplomatic simultaneously. "Dr. Chun, perhaps we should start with introductions. I'm Captain Elena Torres, Earth Defense Coordination. This is Dr. Chun Wei-Ming, our Chief of Xenological Affairs." "Earth Defense Coordination," Commander Vexhai repeated slowly. "Well, we couldn't very well call it Alien Contact Division without seeming presumptuous. Captain Torres replied with a smile that was probably meant to be reassuring, but instead conveyed the distinct impression of barely contained competence. We've been preparing for this conversation since we detected your monitoring stations. Our monitoring stations are undetectable. Dr. Chen's expression shifted to something that could charitably be called polite disagreement. Commander, your monitoring stations broadcast their positions every 6 hours using quantum beacons that are visible from 3 star systems away. We assumed it was intentional, a way of announcing your presence without seeming aggressive. The silence that followed was filled with the sound of Commander Vexhi's worldview undergoing rapid restructuring. General Frackmore, attending via quantum link from the Hegemony Council chamber, produced a color display that registered somewhere between tactical reassessment and existential crisis. You've been aware of our surveillance, General Frackmore stated, his voice carrying the mechanical precision of someone working very hard to maintain professional composure. Aware, grateful, and occasionally entertained, Captain Torres replied. Your reconnaissance probe provided us with an excellent foundation for understanding galactic technology standards. We particularly appreciated the quantum processing cores, though we did have to redesign the power distribution systems. Your engineers seem to prioritize reliability over efficiency. You've been reverse engineering our technology for decades, Ambassador Keelnox interjected, her liquid voice carrying across the quantum link with something approaching admiration. Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. Reverse engineering, forward engineering, sideways engineering. We've been quite thorough, though I should mention that several of our improvements have been incorporated into our civilian infrastructure. Your quantum encryption protocols are now being used to secure our global financial networks. Our quantum encryption is classified at the highest Imperial security levels. General Frackmore's carapace had shifted to a color that didn't exist in most species' visual spectrums. Was classified, Dr. Chen corrected gently. We've been monitoring your military communications for approximately 18 months. Not to intrude, but your operational security protocols have some interesting vulnerabilities. We took the liberty of drafting some recommendations. A data packet materialized an inevitable conclusions communication buffer. A data packet that bypassed approximately 17 layers of security and deposited itself directly into the ship's central command systems. That, Commander Vexhi said quietly, should be impossible. Most interesting things are, Captain Torres replied. Dr. Chun, perhaps you should explain our technical capabilities. The Xenolinguist expression brightened with the enthusiasm of someone about to deliver a lecture they'd been preparing for years. We've established a global quantum communication network that operates on principles your scientists classified as theoretically feasible but practically impossible. Our manufacturing systems utilize programmable matter, something your empire apparently abandoned as too resource-intensive. And our educational institutions have been teaching what you consider advanced physics to primary school children for the past 12 years. Primary school children, Ambassador Keelnox repeated. 10-year-olds, Captain Torres confirmed. They find quantum mechanics intuitive. Something about neuroplasticity and pattern recognition. Our teenagers have been contributing to theoretical research in dimensional engineering. Chancellor Euthera's voice rippled across the quantum link with undertones that suggested either deep concern or profound amusement. You're telling us that your species has integrated advanced physics into basic education. We're telling you that your species apparently considers advanced physics to be advanced, Dr. Chen replied. We've been operating under the assumption that these were foundational concepts, building blocks for more complex theories. More complex theories. General Frackmore's transparency began fluctuating at frequencies visible only to beings with compound eyes. Captain Torres consulted a tablet that seemed to bend space-time around its edges. Dr. Chun has been developing applications for multidimensional engineering. Our Energy Research Division has been working on controlled stellar manipulation, and our Transportation Department has been field testing what we call practical teleportation. Practical teleportation. Commander Vexhi's tongue made a brief appearance, tasted cosmic irony, and retreated permanently. Nothing dramatic, Dr. Chen added modestly, mostly moving small objects across interplanetary distances. Though we did successfully teleport a communications satellite to your outer monitoring station last week, we included a gift basket. The view screen flickered as the ship's artificial intelligence apparently decided that reality was becoming too computationally expensive to render accurately. When the image stabilized, both human women were looking at the camera with expressions of polite expectation. You teleported a gift basket to our classified monitoring station, Ambassador Keelnock said. Fruit, mostly, Captain Torres confirmed, and some technical documentation. Our engineers noticed your power systems were running about 15% below optimal efficiency. We included some upgrade suggestions, along with a few cultural artifacts, Dr. Chen added. Music, literature, mathematical proofs. Things we thought you might find interesting. Oh, and we included our formal application for diplomatic recognition. Your what? General Thrackmore's carapace had progressed beyond visible color spectrums and was now displaying patterns that existed primarily in theoretical mathematics. Our application for membership in the galactic community, Captain Torres explained patiently, complete with proposed trade agreements, culture exchange programs, and mutual defense treaties. We've been working on it for approximately 6 years. 6 years, Commander Vexhi repeated, ever since we decoded your administrative protocols and realized you had bureaucratic procedures for integrating new civilizations. Your documentation is quite comprehensive. By the way, we particularly appreciated the section on technological compatibility assessments. Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly, her expression shifting to something that might have been concern. We did notice that your threat assessment procedures haven't been updated in several centuries. We took the liberty of drafting some modernization suggestions. Nothing presumptuous, just observations from a species that apparently develops faster than your monitoring systems can track. The transmission continued for another 47 minutes, during which the humans proceeded to demonstrate technologies that violated approximately 36 different imperial scientific principles, offer solutions to 17 ongoing galactic engineering problems, and politely inquire whether the Empire had considered upgrading its technological development methodologies. By the end of the conversation, Commander Vexhi had achieved a state of psychological equilibrium that his species typically reserved for contemplating the heat death of the universe, while General Thrackmore's carapace had settled into a pattern that registered as confused acceptance on 43 different species' emotional recognition systems. So, Captain Torres concluded, shall we schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss the details? 6 months after what Imperial historians would eventually classify as the conversation that changed everything, the Hegemony Council Chamber had been redesigned. The previous architecture of cosmic intimidation had been replaced with something more closely resembling a collaborative workspace, complete with holographic displays showing real-time technological development metrics from across 44 different member species. The 44th member was, of course, Earth. Chancellor Yathera materialized in a preferred corner of dimensional space, its energy form cycling through patterns that suggested deep philosophical contemplation, mixed with what could only be described as cosmic bewilderment. The quarterly reports make for fascinating reading. Ambassador Keelnock floated in her aquatic suspension field, reviewing data streams with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent half a year recalibrating her understanding of galactic civilization. The humans have established technological partnerships with 37 species, collaborative research initiatives with 22 governments, and cultural exchange programs with virtually everyone who responded to their communications. They've also, added General Frackmore, whose carapace has settled into a permanent pattern indicating strategic recalibration, begun offer what they call developmental consulting to species experiencing technological stagnation. Representative Movar chimed with crystalline harmonics that expressed professional embarrassment. My government has formally requested assistance with our quantum computing limitations. Apparently, our advanced processing systems are operating on principles these humans mastered during their equivalent of our educational preparation cycles. How many species have requested similar assistance? Chancellor Yathera inquired. Those dimensional fluctuations suggested it already suspected the answer. All of them. Ambassador Keel Knox replied with liquid precision. Every single member species has submitted formal requests for human technological consultation, educational partnership, or developmental guidance. The irony was so profound it seemed to bend space-time around itself. An empire that had spent millennia cataloging and governing the galaxy's most advanced civilizations was now queuing up for advice from a species they had classified as primitively amusing less than a year ago. The most troubling aspect, General Frackmore continued, his transparency flickering with what passed for intellectual humility among the species, is their approach to problem solving. They don't just provide solutions, they teach methodology. Explain, Chancellor Yathera requested. Instead of simply sharing advanced technology, they're sharing the cognitive frameworks that led them to develop that technology. They're not just giving us fish. They're revolutionizing our understanding of fishing, marine biology, and the fundamental nature of aquatic ecosystems. Ambassador Keel Knox's gill slits fluttered with something approaching revelation. They're treating our technological stagnation as a systemic issue rather than a resource limitation. And their proposed solution? Complete paradigm restructuring, she replied, consulting reports that seemed to generate new data faster than she could read them. They've identified what they call institutional innovation inhibition, the tendency for established civilizations to prioritize stability over advancement. Representative Zixtar transmitted an electromagnetic burst that roughly translated to philosophical vertigo. Are you suggesting that our administrative efficiency has been counterproductive to technological development? I'm suggesting, Ambassador Keel Knox continued, that the humans have diagnosed our entire galactic civilization as suffering from what they call success syndrome, the condition where achieving stability leads to risk aversion, which eventually results in developmental stagnation. Chancellor Yathera's form brightened with something that might have been enlightenment or possibly intellectual indigestion. And their recommended treatment? Controlled instability. General Frackmore replied, his carapace displaying patterns that indicated grudging respect. They're proposing systematic disruption of established technological paradigms through what they call constructive chaos protocols. Constructive chaos protocols. Representative Movar chimed with harmonics that expressed the crystalline equivalent of existential reconsideration. Essentially, they want to teach our species how to innovate again. Ambassador Keel Knox explained. They've developed educational programs designed to restore what they call technological curiosity to civilizations that have achieved what we previously considered optimal development. The chamber filled with the sound of 43 different species simultaneously confronting the possibility that their greatest achievement, galactic stability, might also be their greatest limitation. There's more, General Frackmore added, his transparency now cycling through patterns that suggested either tactical admiration or complete psychological surrender. They've begun sharing their historical development models with our xenoarchaeology departments. Historical development models? Documentation of how they achieved such rapid technological advancement, complete with case studies, theoretical frameworks, and implementation guidelines. They're essentially providing instruction manuals for accelerated civilization development. Chancellor Euthera's dimensional presence shifted into configurations that didn't exist in normal space-time. They're teaching us how to be more like them. Not exactly. Ambassador Keel Knox corrected. They're teaching us how to be more like ourselves, but better. Their development models aren't human-specific. They're scalable frameworks for any species that wants to prioritize advancement over maintenance. And the results? Preliminary reports indicate that species implementing human-designed innovation protocols are experiencing technological advancement rates comparable to pre-stagnation periods, General Frackmore reported, his carapace settling into patterns that suggested the military equivalent of intellectual surrender. Representative Zixtar's electromagnetic emissions took on frequencies that expressed something approaching cosmic irony. So the species we initially considered a potential threat has instead become our solution to self-imposed limitations. More than that, Chancellor Euthera observed, its form stabilizing into something resembling profound amusement. They've revealed that our conception of threat assessment was fundamentally flawed. How so? We've been evaluating species based on their potential to challenge our existing power structures. We never considered the possibility that a species might challenge our existing limitations instead. The silence that followed was filled with the kind of realization that typically preceded footnotes in galactic history textbooks reading, and then everything got significantly better. Ambassador Keel Knox accessed her latest reports with the fluid efficiency of someone who had learned to expect the impossible on a regular basis. The humans have submitted a proposal for what they're calling the Galactic Renaissance Initiative, which involves complete restructuring of Imperial research priorities, establishment of interspecies innovation academies, and implementation of what they call systematic curiosity protocols across all member civilizations. They want to revolutionize our entire approach to technological development. General Frackmore observed, they want to revolutionize our entire approach to existing. Chancellor Euthera corrected. And the most disturbing aspect is that their preliminary models suggest it will work. Representative Mulvar produced crystalline harmonics that expressed something that didn't have a name in most languages, but felt distinctly like hope mixed with vertigo. So our final warning to a primitive species has resulted in that species offering to upgrade our entire civilization. That, said Chancellor Euthera, its form cycling through patterns that suggested cosmic appreciation for irony, appears to be an accurate assessment. The chamber settled into contemplative silence as 43 species simultaneously grappled with the realization that the greatest threat to galactic stability might actually be galactic stability itself. Outside the viewports, stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the civilizations orbiting them were about to remember how to reach for something beyond maintenance of the status quo. Somewhere in the Sol system, a species that had never learned the difference between impossible and inconvenient continued doing what they had always done, treating every limitation as a problem waiting to be solved. The galaxy, it seemed, was about to rediscover what that felt like